you fellow rebels. Today I will be taking the political compass test, or to be more specific, the SapplyValues test, mostly because the original political compass test is respectfully full of crap. So, without further ado, let's get into it. I will go with the shuffled version. Okay. Two consenting individuals should be able to do whatever they want with each other, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Agree? One cannot be moral without religion. I'm gonna be neutral in this one. Land should not be a commodity to be bought and sold. Strongly disagree. That is just a simple part of the economy. Exploitation is an outdated term, as the struggles of 1800s capitalism don't exist anymore. I'm gonna say disagree, because even though I still support capitalism, exploitation is still pretty common. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. I would say disagree mostly because I think this is mostly referring to surveillance and stuff like that. And in that case, the government can just take whatever they want. They will take everything out of context and just do whatever they feel like they need to do to keep their power. So I'm gonna say disagree. The death penalty should exist for certain crimes. I'm gonna say agree because I stand with a lot of anarcho-capitalists who basically agree with the non-aggression principle, which is basically that if you commit an act of aggression, you shouldn't expect to be protected if something similar happens to you a while later, because you should only be able to commit an act of violence if it's in self-defense or to protect others. So technically the death penalty doesn't violate that, so yes, I will say agree. Victimless crime should still be punished. Absolutely not. If there is no victim, there is no crime. Authority figures, if morally correct, are a good thing for society. Absolutely not. Authority figures of any kind shouldn't be respected at all. Wages are always fair, as employers know what is best for Wages are always fair, as employers know best what a worker's labor is worth. I'm gonna say neutral on this one because while it is true that labor unions have been disastrous for the free markets, the issue with that is that without the unions, workers would be heavily exploited for the sake of profits. So I prefer, when it comes to unions, to strike a balance between the workers' interests and the employers' interests, I support yellow unions, which are basically company-owned unions who have the interests of both the workers and the customer, so it's sort of a win-win. So I'm gonna say neutral. Strength is necessary for any government to succeed. No, I'm gonna say disagree, because a government doesn't need strength to succeed. All that it needs is to be persuasive. And that's all that a government needs in order to gain significant power over its people, is to be persuasive. It doesn't matter if they're strong or anything. What matters is if people believe their lies. So I'm gonna say disagree. Multiculturalism is bad. Strongly agree. Have you ever noticed that areas that are multicultural have no culture of their own, like New York City? They're just one massive melting pot. There is no culture to them. There is nothing to speak of. And when you have multiple cultures, eventually you get bigots who will not tolerate any of that and see anyone who doesn't believe the same thing as them as evil. So when you mix those two things, you get complete chaos. So multiculturalism is bad. Organizations and corporations cannot be trusted and need to be regulated by the governments. Strongly disagree. I assume the main argument behind this is that the government needs to regulate them, because if they don't, they'll be like monopolies and stuff like that. To that I say that monopolies only exist because of the government, and they still exist to an extent when it comes to patents and stuff like that. So and copyright too. Actually, that would make a really good video topic, exposing how the current copyright system is is not good, and intellectual property in general is not property. So I'm gonna say strongly disagree on this. Homosexuality is against my values. Agree, because I don't say this because I'm Christian or religious, because I'm not religious, I'm agnostic. But it goes against my personal values of like it goes against traditional like conservative values that I hold, that are basically that the thing is that, to quote Hans Hermann Hoppe, homosexuals and people of the LGBT community tend to have a lower time preference because they tend to like not think about the future when it comes to like having kids. So on average, they tend to have a lower time preference. And as a result, as someone who has a high time preference and actually wants to have kids later on, I see homosexuality as going against my values, so agree. Economic inequality is too high in the world. Literally anyone with two brain cells to rub together can say agree, obviously. The real question is, how do we solve it though? All industry and the banks should be nationalized. Strongly disagree. The issue with nationalizing everything is that when you do that, the free market completely goes down the drain, and you have no way of knowing for certain like what people want. So strongly disagree. Drugs are harmful and should be banned. Disagree. While drugs are harmful, I don't think they should be banned. If people can use them responsibly, then they should be allowed to do so. However, if someone can't use them responsibly, it's usually a self-correcting problem. So it's basically survival of the fittest. So I'm gonna say disagree. Police were not created to protect the people, but to uphold the status quo by force. Agree, that is literally the entire purpose of the police. The current welfare system should be expanded to further combat inequality. Strongly disagree, because the welfare system creates like a victim mentality in pretty much everyone that affects, so disagree. The harder you work, the more you progress up the social ladder. I would say neutral, because while this is... I can't tell if this test is trying to say, like, if this applies to modern times, or if this applies to, like, a society where I'm in charge or something like that, a society based off my values. Because if it's based off my values, of course I'm going to say strongly agree. But if it's based on right now, I'm going to say disagree. So I'm just going to go play it safe and say agree. Freedom of business is the best practical way a society can prosper. Strongly agree. The freedom of business is like, it's the entire reason that the West has gained all the power that it has and like has advanced as much as it has. So I'm going to say strongly agree. The government should be less involved in the day-to-day life of its citizens. Strongly agree. The government has no business being like knowing what you ate for breakfast this morning, so I'm going to say agree. Parents should hold absolute power over their children as they are older and more experienced. I'm going to say neutral, because I don't believe that parents should have absolute power no matter what, but the statement that they are older and more experienced is just a more logic. That's just obvious. So I'm actually going to say neutral/unsure. A person should be able to worship whomever and or whatever they want. Agree, obviously. I don't care if someone worships God, Allah, the Buddha, or the great Shiki-Jiki-Biki. I don't care. Unless they worship PETA, in which case they need help. Taxation of the wealthy is a bad idea. Society would be better off without it. Strongly agree. And you know what? If there was a I would go further option, I would flick that. Because taxation in general is like, society would be better off without taxation of any kind. So again, like, this goes back to my community post that I posted before the last video, which was me reacting to memes, which was basically saying that instead of taxing the rich more to pay so they can pay their fair share, why not just tax the poor less? It's much more direct and easy. So yeah, strongly agree. Gender is a social construct. I'm kidding. strongly disagree. What do you want me to say? Mandatory IDs should be used to... Strongly disagree. Only the government can fairly and effectively regulate organizations. Strongly disagree. I'm pretty sure if it said only the free market, I would click strongly agree, but disagree. Transgender individuals should not be able to adopt children. Strongly disagree. I don't support that lifestyle. Does that make me transphobic? No. Do I want like trans people to die? No, not really. What I do want is for them to understand that like that whole lifestyle is degenerate. But should they be allowed to adopt children? Yes, their choice. Animals deserve certain universal rights. I'm split on this, to be honest. I don't really have much to say on it, so I'm going to say disagree. I mean, not disagree, neutral. Nudism is perfectly natural. Yes, it is natural, but is it civilized? No. So I'm going to click agree, but that doesn't mean I actually support nudism. Charity is a better way of helping those in need than social welfare. Strongly agree. Obviously, charity is voluntary, and it's it's by the people for the people. Obviously, laws based on cultural values rather than ethical ones aren't justice. I would say agree because on average, cultural laws tend to be much more subjective. Ethical ones, while I don't agree with the idea of ethics, I do personally believe in the idea of natural law instead of human. I do believe in natural rights over human rights. Because with natural rights, you can sort of look to nature to see what your rights are. But with human rights, they're very subjective. So I'm gonna say agree. An individual's body is their own property, and they should be able to do anything they desire to it. Agree, obviously. It's technically not their property. It's technically, you know what I mean. Because they didn't purchase their own body. That's how I define property. Like something that they inherited or purchased or whatever, something they gained. You don't gain a body, but you know what I mean. Unless you bought it off the black market, in which case you scare me. So I'm gonna say agree. A government that provides for everyone is an inherently good idea. Disagree. A government that provides for everyone would practically just be in practice. Ideally, on paper it sounds good, but in practice, when that's been tried before, as in the Soviet Union, when pretty much any communist country that claims to do that, it's failed miserably. So disagree. Jury nullification should be legal. Yes, I would agree. I actually know what jury nullification is. It's basically basically saying that you neither believe that they're guilty or not guilty or whatever. I can't remember that good. But what does matter is that jury nullification should be legal. It's simply just civilian lawmaking. Class is the primary division of society. I would say disagree. I think the main division of society as of right now is probably, I would say race. Because there are still plenty of racist bigots stuck in the past who still believe in certain scientific racism. Whereas they do make some good points, but those are very few and far between, and the rest of the things that they say are complete madness. So I'm gonna say disagree. The government should, at most, provide emergency services and law enforcement. This is sort of the minarchist argument, which is basically that we should have a night watchman state that only protects that literally only protects property rights. I would say agree, but I don't agree with minarchy. I am definitely more leaning towards anarcho-capitalism because it's much more minarchism is the more pragmatic solution, which I don't entirely agree with, but it's definitely something more achievable. So I'm gonna say agree. It is human nature to be greedy. Yeah, I'm gonna say agree because if it weren't for greed, then because greed and actually I'm gonna say disagree because greed is the reason that the government exists, and government is kind of not natural. I'm pretty sure apes don't have their own organized structure of government where they vote and stuff. But so yeah, I'm gonna say disagree because yeah, state schools are a bad idea because the state shouldn't be influencing our children. Correct. I would say agree because honestly, the condition of public schools as of right now, being surpassed by charter schools and especially private schools perfectly exemplifies how we need school choice and less mandatory things in schools, more things that should be up to the parents rather than the school. So I'm gonna say agree. Sometimes it is right that sometimes it is right that the government may spy on its citizens to combat extremists and terrorists. Strongly disagree. No matter the end goal, a government spying on its citizens it's a violation of property rights and just natural rights in general. So I'm going to say strongly disagree. Communism is an ideal that can never work in practice. Strongly agree. If you need any proof, literally look at all the historical examples. Society requires structure and bureaucracy in order to function. I'm going to say neutral because while it does require some form of structure, not bureaucracy. Because it doesn't matter it should matter what that structure is, but it doesn't matter. Society still needs some kind of structure to it. It may be maybe not a government, but it requires some form of structure, some kind of founding principle. Because without that, it's basically the law of the jungle, which is just you can take whatever you want if you have the strength to do it. So I would say neutral because structure is necessary, but bureaucracy isn't. The smaller the people, the freer the people. No, the smaller the government, the freer the people. Agree. While I do believe that small governments is impossible because the government can always, gain more power, I don't think that a strong government would be very good either. So I would say the smaller the government, the freer the people. Ideally, a small government is better than a large government, and no government is better than a small government. So agree. Without democracy, a society is nothing. Disagree. Because the issue is that I don't the thing is that I don't hate democracy, but I think that I just dislike democracy. The issue is that if I say that I absolutely despise democracy, people think that I'm somehow that I advocate for some kind of totalitarian dictatorship. But really, I don't think the question is democracy bad? It's, do you seriously think that democracy is the best that we can do? Which I personally think it isn't. There's got to be a better solution out there somewhere, so I'm going to say disagree. In times of crisis, safety becomes more important than civil liberties. Agree. To the government, yes, but to the people, no. Actually, I'm going to say neutral. Autonomy of the body extends to minors, the mentally ill, and serious criminals. I'm not sure on this. I'm going to click neutral. Let's see. Did you complete this test in a serious or at least unironic manner? Yes, but get me to the result already. I'm filming a video here. Oh, it put me in the dead center of the lid right, so... Okay, let's see. It labeled me as more progressive, which I don't entirely agree with. I'm definitely more leaning towards conservatism. I mean, I agree with the placements of it putting me in the lid-right quadrants, but I don't really think that it should be around here. I would more say it's around this area, more radical, but not all the way right to the right. You know what I mean? Because if I go lower, we get to abolitionism and all that. I think here is the anarchist zone, which is where I would put myself. And when we get to the far right here, we get absolute monarchists and stuff like that, anarcho-monarchists, which is ridiculous. I still think it's possible, but it's kind of a goofy ideology. So I would more put myself around this area, but I can see why it would put me around here because I seem kind of moderate. So yeah, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.